homelessness, in any of those areas. We also expanded the definition of source of income discrimination, and that's really important. Even though source of income discrimination has long been protected under the Human Rights Act, the new law, when it amended the Human Rights Act, explicitly provided circumstances in which it demonstrates that a housing provider may have discriminated against someone based on their source of income. So that's huge. And then, of course, we also have the Eviction Record Sealing Act. That law has a number of different parts, but with respect to the Office of Human Rights and the Commission, what we're looking at is that eviction record sealing is also becoming another protected trade. So now instead of 21 protected trades, we now have 23 protected trades, right? So we're super proud of the residents of the District of Columbia. And so that one also means that a person who has an eviction record sealed cannot be discriminated or treated differently because they have an eviction record sealed. And so I just wanted to share those few things with everyone this evening. And normally I would share events that are occurring within the Office of Human Rights and the Commission, but you all know the biggest event that's coming up. We are less than a month away from our Human Rights Gala, December 6th. So I hope everyone has their bow tie and evening wear to go. And I want to say thank you to the Commission and particularly the Gala Committee.
Well, there's an
awards committee.
Awards committee for steadfastly, and Chief Judge Pearson, who's been an active, I think, leader in trying to coordinate our gala, as well as folks from my team, Tyler and Mia. So we hope that this will go off without a hitch, and we're so excited for the awards this year. With that, I turn back whatever time I have left to the chair.
Thank you so much. That was very fast and a good job. You had an action-packed year last year. Congratulations. Lots of achievement. And we were also able to witness some of that. In fact, we did participate in some of the listening labs. The last one I participated in was on disability. It was done very well. I think it's a very good formula that you have with the keynote speaker and the government witness and so on and so forth. So
And the discussion
very-
tables.
yes,
Yeah.
and very well done. So congratulations. Any questions for Director Kine? Would you like to just quickly update us on the industry study?
Yes, you know what? I had it on my reports and I was skipping over it because I thought maybe I was taking up too much time. But FY23, I would say it's a season of reports. There are lots and lots of reports we're going to be publishing, and we have not forgotten about this industry standard study, which those of you that aren't familiar with it, OHR was looking into timeframes in other jurisdictions for processing cases and comparing that finding with our current practice here. So the short answer is we've gotten our contractor who worked on that to complete their research and their summary of findings. But we are in the process of digesting all of that, seeing if there's anything else that we need and concluding and wrapping up that report. So my hope is that that report will be published in Q2 of the fiscal year. So sometime between January to March. But I'll mention that by law, we are required to publish a number of reports, which we are going to be publishing in the next couple of months, which is the annual report for the agency as a whole, the language access annual report, as well as this year, every 2 years we produce the youth bullying prevention report. And this year is one of those years that we will be producing that. So that's a report that's coming out. And as many of you may know, we are also working on taking a look at the state of source of income discrimination in DC, as well as transgender study report that is coming out. So lots and lots of reports to come in Q2 and Q3 of that part.
Wow, that's very impressive. Thank you so much. If there are no more questions, I will move to the next agenda item, which is the report of the Chief Administrative Law Judge. And we gonna get commission case inventory reports as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Pearson.
All right, thank you. We did hold our first half of the new commissioner training on October 24th. We had to reschedule the second half of it. So I'll reach out to you to do that. I want to say congratulations to Rose, for our law clerk. She passed the bar. And
Yay!
I had the honor of swearing her into the DC bar.
Oh, wonderful.
And I gave you a little picture because she was so cute. She was so excited being sworn in to the DC bar. So she's officially an attorney now. So we're really happy for Rose.
So proud.
Congratulations.
We did successfully hold our first hybrid hearing using the same equipment that we're using now to hold this hybrid meeting. It definitely takes multiple people to make that happen during the hearing. And so OHR was very kind to lend us their interns who kind of were our tech assistants during the hearing, and we definitely couldn't have done it without them. But it actually went really smoothly. So we had the attorneys in the hearing room, and then we had the witnesses testifying by Zoom. And so they would see each other. We could share the screen for the exhibits and then project them on the wall. So it actually went really, really well. We were pretty excited about that. We did have to do a couple of run-throughs beforehand to learn how to use everything, but we've got it. I've given you the year-end data for fiscal year 2022, which ended September 30th. New cases filed. We had a total of 18 new cases filed for that were commission cases this year. We closed a total of 13 cases, which is actually a really good close rate because you want to have, be in at least more than 50 percentile of the, when you're comparing closing versus new cases. So that keeps you from getting too much of a backlog if you keep your closure rate down that way. The number of cases pending more than 15 months by the end of the fiscal year was 16%. So we've seen a pretty nice downward trend every quarter in the length of time that the cases have been pending in the commission, starting with 41% in Q1 were more than 15 months old, and ending the fiscal year with only 16% of the cases being more than 15 months old. And then looking at our current case inventory, we have a total of 25 cases pending. We're giving you the breakdown on those cases. Also, you might find interesting that the data for the end of the year on attorney representation. For commission cases, it was only 18% of complainants who had attorneys, compared to 76% of respondents who had attorneys in the cases. And for OHR, the cases, that was a little higher. It's 50% had complainants had counsel, but 100% of the respondents have attorneys because those cases are DC government agencies. So either the agency is representing them or the Office of the Attorney General is representing them in government cases. So we definitely have, a bit of a pretty significant imbalance of power when it comes to representation in the commission cases.
So I would note, of course, that OHR attorneys appear in the commission cases.
That's true.
Although we don't represent the complainants, we do pursue public interest, which includes relief for complainants in those cases.
That's a really important point, because when one of the hardest parts with a non-representative complainant is they don't necessarily know what they need to meet their burden. And OHR does a really good job of filling in those gaps. So if the complainant is not putting on the evidence that they need to meet their burden, OHR will put that evidence on to make sure that it gets into the record. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much for that report. Lots of work. Congratulations for the achievements. I know that many people participated in tribunals to help move the cases. So thank you very much. Any questions for Chief Judge Pearson? No, okay, well, you can certainly, this data is available in the packet, right?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
in the
so
packet.
sent out
Certainly.
today.
Yeah, and
Have a
the
look
case
at-
lists are in your packet as well.
And also, if you have any additional questions, you can come back. So the next item is the report of the chair of the commission. I'm gonna skip that because I have a lot to say about the Neil Alexander Award, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm not gonna take up any of your time. And move to the next item, which is item 8. We have a very special guest speaker from one of us. Charlotte Clymer kindly asked us to give us a little talk about her, I guess, her advocacy experience. I was asked by several commissioners about your background because it was so interesting, and so people said we would like to hear more about what she does. I also caught an announcement that somehow she was invited by the White House to the Elton John concert. And I noticed that the rest of us were not. I don't know what the magic is right there, so.
They'll let anyone in these days, let me tell you.
So, Charlotte, I'm gonna turn the mic over to you and, please, give us the secret sauce there. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Director Kine, Chief Judge Pearson. Folks, it's so good to be here tonight. This is my first proper commission meeting, and it's an honor to join your ranks. I am Charlotte Clymer. My pronouns are she, her. I have been a DC resident for about 15 years now. I came here with the Army when I was just passed when I turned 19 years old. When I got out of the Army, I went to school here at Georgetown, and after graduation, I stayed and did advocacy work, and I've been here ever since. And I love the district. District is so much of what I would love to see in the rest of the country. A big reason for that is the long history of trans advocacy and protections that exist in the district that don't exist anywhere else. So the rate of trans people in the United States is about 0.6% of the national population. That's according to the Williams Institute at UCLA. And the percentage of DC that's transgender, 13 years and older, is about 2.8%, almost 3%. So the average of trans people in DC is almost 5 times the rate of the national average. We are quite literally the trans capital of the United States, the District of Columbia. We really are. And I think the reason for that is due in large part to the Human Rights Act. The fact that we have protections that exist here that really don't exist almost anywhere else in the country, save a few places like New York, perhaps LA to some extent. Now, the reason this is so important and what motivated me to join the commission is that we are starting to see an avalanche of anti-trans actions across the country, mostly in state legislatures. Before this year, the situation was already pretty bad. There is this disconnect between how the public perceives the state of LGBTQ equality and how it actually is. So about 6 years ago, Reuters did a poll and they asked voters a number of questions, but 2 of them really stood out. The first question was they asked American voters, do you support LGBTQ rights? And do you support trans equality? And the good news is about 3/4 of respondents said yes, that they do support trans equality and LGBTQ non-discrimination protections, including about half of Republican respondents, which is great news. The second question I asked is, do those LGBTQ protections exist at the federal level? And about half of respondents said yes, that LGBTQ protections do exist at the federal level. And that is incorrect. There are no LGBTQ protections at the federal level. Now, there are 2 Supreme Court cases. There is the Obergefell in 2015, which legalized same-sex marriage. And there's Bostock, which came in 2020 and guaranteed employment non-discrimination throughout all 50 states and the territories within the United States. So those are the 2 Supreme Court rulings. That's it. That's all, nothing else. Now, what does this mean? In about 29 states, there are no protections for LGBTQ people against discrimination in housing, credit, public accommodations, jury service, education, just about every facet of the public square. In 29 states, LGBTQ people are vulnerable to discrimination. Now, I'm not going to say that it's necessarily legal, but there are no protections against that discrimination. So quite literally, if Secretary Buttigieg, who as a straight cisgender gay white man, who we would I think accurately point to as the most privileged demographic within the LGBTQ community, if he were to drive from here in DC all the way to LA, the rights to which he is entitled as an American citizen would change dramatically based on what city, county, and state he's driving through, because he's a gay man. Now, that's a white, straight, cisgender gay man. So if we look at trans women of color who do not have his privileges, they are entitled to even less rights than he is in most of the United States. So if I go through Missouri, if I go through my home state of Texas, if I go through Arkansas or Utah, all of these states, and especially in the middle, there are few rights to which I am entitled as an American citizen, even though otherwise I would have all of the rights under our constitutional protections. That's a big problem. And I think what we're seeing right now is a wave of anti-LGBTQ discrimination that is going to force people to move to parts of the country where those protections do exist. Now, because DC has a very good reputation within the trans community nationally, we're going to see an influx of trans people moving to the District of Columbia in the next decade. It's going to happen. I would imagine, and I'm not a data scientist, I don't know a lot about population studies, but I can guarantee that the population of trans residents in DC is going to explode within the next decade. That's going to come with a lot of responsibilities for, I would say, accommodating that influx of population with resources. It's certainly going to mean that there are trans folks who, for whatever reason, are homeless, unemployed, may not have certain resources that would normally be available in a just society. And I think that a lot of that responsibility is going to fall on this agency in order to assure that accommodation and that influx of trans non-binary people. There's especially concern over trans non-binary people of color, particularly Black women. Black women are the most targeted. Black trans women and Black non-binary folks are the most targeted demographic in the country, the most vulnerable to violence and discrimination. That's, homelessness, that's being passed over for jobs, that is certainly violence. Something like at least 56 trans people were murdered in the United States last year. The vast majority of them were Black women. Now, that is a consistent data point for as long as it's been recorded, especially over the past decade. So, the work of this agency and the work of this commission is so critically important because we're going to need a massive education campaign over the next decade as we see more trans non-binary people come to the district and take part in this incredible community that has been built over decades, not just by trans activists, but certainly by everyone who has made DC what it is. And certainly by this fantastic government that has ensured trans protections for so long. So it is an honor to join you all. I am so touched and really delighted to begin this new chapter with the commission and with ODR overall. And I cannot wait to get to work.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Some people have their hands up.
Okay, questions? Rose, please go ahead.
Oh, I was actually doing the clap reaction.
Okay.
Oh, that was a
apologize.
clap.
Yeah, excellent. Any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was very, very informative. Thank you. Actually, I wish the rest of the commissioners were able to hear that.
It's recorded, so.
Yeah, it's
So you
recorded and well, the minutes will circulate. So thank you so much for sharing your activities and your projection going forward, right? That is something to take note, and it's something for Director Kind to take note as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Great, now we will move to Chief Judge Pearson.
Chairman, I just had something that I'd like to say, before we move on, and that's welcome aboard, Charlotte. So glad to meet you. And while you were speaking, there were so many memories of the past which came forward. For example, many years ago when my neighbors who were trans felt that they had to move because it was before marriage was approved in DC, and they had decided to move to New Zealand because the rights were so much greater there for their population. And then I just had the pleasure of hearing you speak about how my hometown has changed. And it's so great to hear that. And I just asked that, as you join us and as the months pass, that you try to reflect on the things that we're doing well and help us to understand how we can share that, because I think DC, is clearly the leader in so many areas, yet we don't really do a good job of publicizing the rights that we have here. So, food for thought for the coming months, but welcome aboard.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. I really appreciate that. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we only have these rights because of the decades of advocacy, particularly of Black trans women in the district. I would not be where I am today were it not for the blood, sweat, and tears of so many Black trans women who've lived in the district for decades and fought for these rights. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to give credit where it's due real quick.
Do you want to say something? No?
Well, I was reflecting on a neighbor who I knew her when she was born as Claire. And when he was 12, he let the world around him know that we should call him Michael. And and this was during COVID, so we didn't have pride marches, official pride marches, but I organized the neighborhood to have pride marches for Michael, and 100 people showed up. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, bless you. That's great.
I'll send you a video.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those stories. Very important. Okay, now I will hand over the mic to Judge Pearson for her presentation on open meeting update.
Right, I'm going
Thank
to
you.
share my screen. This is not going to be that long. It's about 10 minutes.
There it
Oh,
is.
there it is. Okay. So I attended some training for open meetings. And I found that, we're doing, most things right. So that's good. But there were some things that we were not doing right. Yeah. And so I wanted to share those things so that we can just make some small adjustments so that we are doing them right. So one of the first things we learned was that there's a requirement that when we put out the agenda or any notices, that the bottom of it have this statement that says the meeting is governed by the Open Meetings Act, and that you have any questions or complaints to contact the Office of Open Government. And you'll see I have it on this agenda. It's the first time I've put it on the agenda because I didn't know about it. Computer's moving very slowly. Okay. Closed meetings. The big thing that I learned was that whenever you have a closed session, that before leaving the public session, you're required to not just announce that you're going into the closed session, but you have to announce the citation from the Open Meetings Act that authorizes you to go into a closed session. And so some of there's several justifications that they have in the statute for closed meetings. And so I just listed the ones that would apply to the commission. A lot of them had to do with schools, because there's some certain provisions for schools. So the number that you see in the parentheses, that's the subsection of the statute. So if the meeting is by court order or statute required to be a closed meeting, if you're doing any kind of negotiations, if you're an attorney-client privilege issue, if you're getting advice from an attorney, premature disclosure of an award recipient or scholarship recipient, I think just moved, any personnel matters, training can be in closed session. If you're deliberating on adjudication, that's a closed session, and anything to do with investigations would be authorized closed session. They also noted that there is a difference between closed session and executive sessions, even though they are pretty much the terms used interchangeably. And they said it's not really a problem to use the terms interchangeably, but just that you should still know what the difference is between closed and executive, and that basically a closed meeting is a meeting in which there are only members and guests are invited, but it's not necessarily a secret meeting or a confidential meeting. But an executive session would be also just members or invited people, but you're honor bound not to disclose whatever was discussed in that meeting. And that's pretty much the only difference. But also that the closed session is supposed to be recorded. Now it doesn't have to be publicly posted, but there has to be a record of it, because it is possible that sometime in the future, somebody could come back to challenge either through a FOIA request or something that occurred in an executive session. So we should always still have the record. The agency should have the record, but you don't post it to your website. So that's one thing that we haven't been doing, is recording the closed sessions. So what they said, you're supposed to basically move to enter the executive or the closed session, not just automatically go into it. And you're supposed to have a vote and take a roll call. In the minutes should reflect that you've taken a roll call and you've had a majority say, yes, we want to go into closed session or executive session. So I think that's something that we haven't done. Also, whatever you discuss in the disclosure session, it has to be limited to what you've stated the closed session is for, so that you aren't supposed to just say, oh, by the way, while we're here, let's also talk about XYZ. You could only talk about that item that you disclosed as being part of the closed session. And then after the closed session, you're supposed to reopen the public meeting. So we usually do it. We had been adjourning the public meeting and then do the closed session, but you are supposed to report back at the open meeting about the closed session, any non-confidential part of that meeting for the record. And so he gave some examples. He was saying it's a really good idea just to have preset scripts for going into things like closed session, and that the presiding officer has to state, the reason for the closure, including the subsection. And so I've given that to the chair now, so that she has and you have a handout that says open meetings training takeaways, which is just like a one-page sort of just bullet point of what kind of most important things from this. But also on the second page, it has all of those citations that we just went over. So if you can, whatever the closed session is about, you can just plug in that citation. And so this is just an example script that he had given us, which you would say something like, okay, we're at item 4, the closed session. It's the last item on our agenda to discuss our upcoming administrative advanced placement exams, the training of faculty, just whatever's going, you put in the agenda. And then you'd say something like closure is enabled for those topics under the Open Meeting Act's list of reasons for closure, paragraphs 6, 12, and 15. Those are under, it's a long sentence, but you just fill in those sections into there. So I've given that to the chair. And then talking about the record of the meeting, you don't have to have both an audio recording and meeting minutes. Now, I think we like having meeting minutes because it's a good easy record. It's hard to kind of go back and listen to a bunch of recordings when you're trying to find out what's going on. So it's not a problem to have both, but it was just saying you don't need to have both. And also you're supposed to post within 3 days, which sometimes is kind of hard to do. But he said if you post the recording within 3 days, that's sufficient. You don't have to actually post the draft meeting minutes within 3 days if you posted the audio or video recording of the meeting within 3 days. So that's just an option that you have. You also have an option of transcripts, which is not something we've ever done, but that's considered permissible also to have a transcript or video recording of the meeting. And also the draft, we published the notice for these meetings in the DC Register, and we put the draft agenda, but most of the time we don't know exactly. It's just really the shell, because we don't know at the time of posting. We have to post about 3 weeks before the meeting, so we don't necessarily know. So it's more like a sample agenda. But again, that notation has to be at the bottom of that notice that we publish in the DC Register as well. So I will add that to the notice. Also, interesting enough, he specifically mentioned our minutes because they do go and read periodically check the minutes of the different agencies just to see that you're complying with the statute. And he specifically mentioned our minutes as being like a little too detailed. So they were saying you actually don't in the minutes put everything that is said, that you only put what action is taken. You don't have to put a summary of all of the discussions that have gone on, and that you shouldn't list who voted for what. Because there could be many reasons that somebody voted for something. And I think some of the minutes have said, this person, that person voted yes, but they say you just put the number, this many people voted yes, this many people voted no, but you don't specify who voted how in the minutes, that's not necessary. So I'm sure that will make Rose happy. We can shorten those minutes just a little bit. And then in addition to the Open Meetings Act, there are some regulations that the Office of Open Government has put out. And they're not really different, but they do have these specific requirements here that records for all meetings shall contain any draft and final meeting agenda. So we haven't been making the draft agenda and the final agenda part of that kind of minutes that are posted at the end, but that's supposed to be included in what we post at the end of the year. So we'll start doing that. And that the agenda, if we change the agenda during the meeting, if we take a motion, say, well, we're going to take this ahead of the other item, that has to be documented. You have to redo that agenda for the final agenda that gets posted. So it needs to reflect any changes that were voted on into the agenda during the meeting. He spent a lot of time talking about motions and, whether you need to second motions. And, he was saying that it's sort of a hyper technicality. A lot of times, there's certain things that you absolutely need to have a second on, but there's a lot of things that you don't need to have a second on. So they're saying, if more than one person has voiced just, support for something that you're talking about, you don't actually have to call for a second because you really already got 2 people. So it's not necessary to do that. And also that the chair can unilaterally adjourn the meeting. They don't have to take a motion to join the meeting, that once you get to the end of the agenda, there's nothing else to discuss, and the chair can just adjourn the meeting, doesn't have to call for a motion. And so that was it. That was just some highlights of some things that we can make a few little improvements on to be compliant.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I was not able to attend that particular training, so I'm grateful for that readout. Any questions from the commissioner? Ellie?
Yeah, so this may be convoluted, but just knowing human nature, I'm kind of curious to understand what the consequences are if we have made mistakes, or how to ensure that we continue not to make mistakes by motivating ourselves to understand what the consequences are.
Well, worst case scenario, they could fine an agency, but they really don't do that. What they'll do is do a letter of admonishment. So if they get a complaint, let's say, that an agency is not complying, then they'll just do a letter to that agency saying, you're not in compliance and, maybe put you on like an improvement plan or something like that. That's kind of worst case, scenario, and is just admonishment.
I just want to say that I did attend that training and you explained it much better than at the training. So thank you.
Okay, we certainly do not want to be admonished, and so we will strive to meet all applicable requirements. Thank you very much for that, and I took note.
I gave you the slides in the handout.
Yes,
Great, thank
yes.
you so much. All right, if there are no other questions, and I don't see any. We are now at the point of new business. You recall that we have sadly lost Brian Griffey to the Office of Human Rights at the United Nations. Yeah, who could blame him, right? So as a result, we have had a vacancy in the vice chair position that he has held. And so the notice of election for that position was given out at the last meeting. And I have invited people to come forward and, sorry, Maria, do you have a question? Okay, I see a hand there. Is that an old hand?
No, it's
Oh, that's a mouse. Oh, that's your mouse. Okay.
Oh, that's my mouse.
Okay. So where was I think I have invited people to come forward, self-nominate or nominate others. Meanwhile, I have received a self-nomination by Karen Mulhauser. I'm very grateful for that. I am, I guess, notifying everybody that there is the self-nomination and inviting others to come forward if they would like to nominate themselves or others. Are there other nominations, please?
please.
Please. So, hearing none, seeing no other nominations, I guess we will take a quick vote. And is acclamation okay in this instance, right? So those in favor of Karen Mulhauser becoming the vice chair of the commission, please say aye. Okay, excellent. Those opposed, please say no. Okay. Hearing none.
If you say no, you have to do it.
Exactly.
So I declare that Karen Mulhauser is the vice chair. Congratulations.
So I've never been a chair of vice before, but
Well, you're gonna have to live through this. I have to say, Karen has been, I think, the longest serving commissioner.
could be.
Yeah, on the commission. And as far as I can remember, she has been at just about every single commission meeting and the gala meetings and all the extracurricular activities. She's been a steadfast member of the commission. And so I'm very happy to for her to step forward. I cannot think of anybody more deserving. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm very thankful also for your service. Which actually then puts us into this conundrum of having a vacancy for her secretary position. And so I'm going to quickly ask if there is anybody who would like to come forward and serve as secretary. If so, please nominate yourself or nominate others. And by the way, the secretary position is not very demanding. It used to be that the position must keep records, right? Physical records of the commission deliberations and whatnot, but now everything is electronic. And so I guess that is really not the central part of the position. And it's really the roll call And that is the secretary's
Well,
responsibility.
and then the other responsibility, I mean,
Is,
we've been so fortunate that there have been roses.
Well, yes, so there is interns and
Legal aids and so
legal
forth.
aids and at times OHR staff have helped us keep the minutes. And so the secretary, I think
Just
we
reviews them.
only had to do it once, yeah, with, yes, I had to, we had to both do that at that one time. Anyway, other nominations. Okay, I don't see any nominations coming through, so,
I'll volunteer.
Yay!
That'll be my hazing, as joining the commission.
Carol, thank you
That's
so
wonderful,
much.
thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful. This is very much appreciated. So these positions will serve to the end of the year, at which point we will hold another election because we have to do this annually. But I hope you guys don't change your mind. I should not have said that. Anyway, so I am very happy that both positions are filled. So congratulations. Any comment discussions? I don't think so. So I will now briefly update you on the gala business. I think you all know that the gala is going to be December the 6th. From 5:30 to 7:30 thereabouts. It will be at 655 15th Street, same as last year. And I hope that event is in your calendar and you're planning to attend. The awards committee and the extended awards committee actually has been busy with the preparations, but first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for the nominations you made or contacting your network to ask for nominations. We actually received 8 nominations officially in the first round for the various awards. That is, and including some nominations coming from outside. And so that's the first achievement really for the commission, because in the past awards committee made those nominations. So thank you very much for your participation in that. So I said we initially received 8 nominations. And we subsequently had to receive additional nominations for the Emerging Leaders Award. But I'm happy to say that the Extended Awards Committee selected all the winners today. And we finished our selection today. And there are 5 winners. And I propose, because the winners have not even been notified yet, let alone have not been notified, and we have made no public announcements. So we will have a closed session a little later on to share the winners with you. But that important work of selection of the winners has been done, and I would really like to thank the Extended Awards Committee. First of all, the awards committee members are Adam and Karen by virtue of her leadership in the outreach committee. So thank you very much. And the extensions, the extended members were Robert Baldwin III and Stuart Anderson. And of course, Judge Pearson being the indispensable part of our proceedings. So thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge all of that. And Tyler and Mia contributing also to the preparation for the gala. I don't think I really need to bore you with all the preparations. We are busily ordering the physical awards and finalizing the catering menu and ordering swags. And should I even say this year we're going to have special M&Ms to be handed out at the event that will bear important logos and slogans and so on and so forth. So look out for those. But I think that is enough for now. Are there any questions about the gala? I think you know enough about where and how. So not seeing any questions, I'm gonna move to the next item, item 12, which is the committee reports. May I hand over to Commissioner Mulhauser, the chair of the outreach committee, for a brief report?
The outreach committee and their members are here on the screen, several of them. Were asked to reach out to the communities in which they are involved, their faith communities, their organizations where their name is known and they're involved, to ask them to submit nominations. And some of that has happened. Some of the candidates that we received came through that process. And so that's really been the first work of the outreach committee. Hopefully in the next year, the outreach committee, people signed up for the outreach committee with the understanding that they would be able to make some presentations about the now 23 protected traits and the work of the Office of Human Rights to some of the private sector communities. And so next year, we're going to get some training in order to make sure that the presentations that the outreach committee members make are appropriate in that way. So stay tuned for more information about that. And let's see, members who are on the screen here with us is Tara Janine and Marie Burnett and Robert is on it now, and there are a couple of others who are not with us this evening, but thank you for your patience. We're going to get that training and help educate the community. There are an awful lot of people in this town who have no idea that there is an Office of Human Rights, that there are 23 protected traits. And so that's something that we're going to be thinking about. And there's a possibility, there's been some discussion about possibly creating an outreach to youth, young people in DC, so that they also, and this was something that I became very aware of at one of the listening labs when I sat at a table with a teenager who talked about the sexual assaults and harassments that she was and her friends were experiencing. And so if there's a way that young people, because they are more credible sources to each other than somebody with graying hair, if young people can have a community where they help other young people understand what the traits are, that would help us be, as Charlotte said, we're already a pretty good human rights town, but this would help us be even more inclusive in understanding our human rights. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Hearing none.
If you think of something later, just reach out to me.
Yep, well, she's always interested in new ideas. I will just give you a very quick update of the Rules Committee, of which I am an acting chair. Well, so after a bit of a hiatus, we are now fully constituted with Commissioner Collinson and Commissioner Baldwin III having agreed and confirmed their participation in the Rules Committee. And of course, we have Chief Judge Pearson as our legal advisor. And so I think that we can resume our work. And I would suggest that we do that in January, just because our plates are so full at this point. But we really need to pick up where we left off and look at the rest of the various rules and compare notes on what need changing. So I am absolutely thrilled that work can go on. I will also take this opportunity to say I'm happy to be relieved of my position as acting chair of that committee or the acting chair of the awards committee. So anybody who would like to replace me, perhaps after the gala, and perhaps in the new year, I would be very, very happy to be relieved. Okay, so enough said. Any questions in that regard? Okay, hearing none, and I just want to thank Ellie and Robert for, actually, I had to twist Robert's arm because he had already volunteered for the outreach committee, but I thought it would be absolutely beneficial for us to have his skill set as a litigator, and he kindly agreed, allowed me to twist his arms. So thank you very much. Moving to item number 13, announcements. Are there announcements? I think we already heard some of that, but anything from?
Well, I have a brief announcement, and those of you who've been on the commission for a while know that I regularly talk about gender equity, and the theme for our gala is gender equity and gender inclusiveness and so forth. I've been very involved since 2015 in trying to get DC government to pass a law that reflects the UN Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, called CEDAW. And Councilmember White introduced it. 8 council members are sponsors. So it's, since there's only 13 council members, there's a good chance it'll pass. And there was a hearing earlier this year. There have now been 2 markups. The last markup was today. And now there'll be 2 votes in DC Council. The first vote will be on the 15th. And then because DC is not a state, we don't automatically get to have our laws. So there has to be 30 working days of Congress to happen before we actually get to have this law. I think Congress is going to be so confused and complicated in 30 days, starting from December through whatever, and recesses and so forth. So we're not going to be noisy about this until after the 30 days have passed, because we don't want to have any member of Congress say, no, you can't have that law. And there are some who would say that. So, but after it has the 30 days, working days, not calendar days, have passed, we can be very noisy and talk about how it's time that the United States ratified CEDAW. We're one of 6 countries that hasn't gone on record saying we support gender equity. And Congresswoman Norton has said that she'll be noisy on our behalf and also talk about statehood. We shouldn't have to have Congress say it's okay for you to have this law. So it's kind of like being a colony instead of a state. So that's just an announcement.
Thank you.
I'll send you information once.
So this is the bill that we supported, is that right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, isn't it? And so did the substance change very much?
No. The bill is exactly, it went
Exactly, I see.
exactly as when I circulated it earlier,
Yes.
and it went through 2 markups that they were each like 5 minutes long. No one on the council, the DC council, made any suggested changes. So
I see,
it's the exact same law, and
great.
I can circulate it to the commission just as a reminder if you no longer have it.
Great, thank you so much, and that's a very important update, so I appreciate that. Now we are at item 14, and It's our last agenda item to discuss the awardees for this year's Human Rights Gala. So, because as I mentioned, the winners are being informed of their awards and pending that in the public announcement, the identity of the awardees is confidential. And as a result, we will have is this a closed session? It's an executive session.
Executive session.
Yeah, because it's confidential, right?
Mhm.
So this session is enabled for this topic under the Open Meetings Act's list of reasons for
Yes.
closure, namely paragraph 7 of section 405B of the Open Meetings Act, EC Code, section 2-575B7. I hope the monitors are listening to us. And I hereby move for us to hold this executive session. And Karen, would you just do a roll call to make sure that everybody is agreeable, please?
For those who are present, Robert? Do you agree for a closed session? Executive session? Maybe busy,
He's
so,
gonna have to step away.
yeah, Maria,
Juggling 2
are
meetings.
you supporting an executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, I am.
Thank you, Robert Baldwin III. And Ellie
Yes, sorry, I had to take my pizza out of the oven.
and Adam. Yes. And Charlotte,
Yes.
so, and Matopo, I'm sure.
Yeah, and Terry Jennings.
Oh, and Terry Janine. When? Okay, I
Terry
think
Jennings, are you there?
she,
Okay.
but we have a
We have
a
6.
majority, yes.
Out of 7, and so that would enable us to hold this executive session. And this is the last item of the business. We will now ask the members of the public who are attending the meeting to please leave the room, if we any. And we will end this public stream and join our private stream. We anticipate adjourning the executive session and reconvening in about, I'd say 10 to 15 minutes, no more. The executive session will be recorded and all members of the commission are reminded to limit the discussion during the executive session to the announced topic. Any collective decision, collective commitment, or other final action by the commission will occur after it reconvenes in an open meeting to the extent it can be